Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I am your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. And like how we have your attention, do us the same favor we always ask. Just share this video with a friend or two or 5,000 so we can have a really, really lively discussion. Now, the family is the cornerstone of our society, and I don't have to explain all the ways in which it contributes to the growth and development of our society. One of the tools our government uses to ensure families are able to resolve issues that affect them is the family court. On today's show, we'll seek to explore the ways in which the court executes its duties and examine some of the challenges persons face as they try to navigate the system. Here today to help us work this out is Senior Social Worker in the Kingston and St. Andrew Family Court, Miss Audeya Fuller. Welcome, Miss Fuller.
Thank you so much, Vaughn, for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you. Because this is a topic I really wanted to touch soon because we've been getting a lot of questions, especially online on our social media, about the family court and how to use it effectively and so on. So before I even get into it, let's just establish exactly what the purpose of the family court is. From a, I guess from a judicial or from a good technical standpoint.
Yes. As the name suggests, the family court is the legal entity that deals with most matters pertaining to children and the family.
Okay.
All right. So I say most matters because not all. I will list out what we deal with, and I'll tell you up front, we don't deal with divorce.
Oh, okay, because that was something I wanted to. Well, I'm glad we cleared that got that out of the way soon.
Yes,
so the family court does not deal with divorce. No. I believe that's the Supreme Court, right?
Right, that is relegated to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court.
All right, so persons who feel like there's a way to to beat the system and get it done to the family court, you probably lost your money.
Sorry about that.
All right, so what?
So the services that we do cater for now are like maintenance, child maintenance, spouse maintenance, and a lot of people don't know that your aged parents can take you to court for maintenance if you're not helping them in their old age.
Yeah, okay.
So there's that as well. Also custody and access to child matters. So the relationship has broken up. You want the child, I want the child. And we're in this tug-and-war for the child, which is bad, psychological and emotionally.
Definitely.
For all involved. So you come to an entity like the family court to have that sorted out. Paternity is also a very fast-growing service.
Paternity, definitely.
Yes,
I can
we
just
answer
imagine.
the question, is the father the father?
Exactly. The jacket question.
Yes, the jacket question. We attempt to establish paternity. And there are two types. One that is settled conclusively by DNA testing, and one where the father has already passed. So we have to do an investigation, get witness statements, etc., to establish that kind of paternity. And then the father's name, even though he's deceased, is then added to a child's birth certificate.
And so on.
Correct.
Now, let me ask you, what are some of the more, I mean, you just mentioned that the paternity is one of the faster or the fastest growing segments of what the family court does. But what are some of the more common things that you find persons coming before the courts for?
Oh, well, our number one most access service is child maintenance. Child maintenance. Followed by custody, yes. And then closely by the paternity matters. And also, it is children's court. So two types or two groups of children are catered for at the court. The first group is in need of care and protection. That means that they have been exposed to abuse, neglect, abandonment of any sort. And the second group that we cater to are the ones who have committed themselves criminally. Okay. And the age of criminal responsibility in Jamaica is 12. 12? Yes. So 12 and up, you can be charged criminally, and the children would come to our court to answer for their crimes, except if that crime is committed with a gun.
Okay, so that's a different matter altogether.
Yes, that is the gun court.
Okay. Right. Now, let me ask you, well, before, one of the more common things, especially like I was saying, we see a lot of questions about how to navigate the family court system. One of the common perceptions out there is that the court itself is biased towards women. You have lots of men who are saying that whenever they come before the court trying to make cases, for example, about maintenance or visitation or even custody and access, things like that, you find that the judges tend to be more inclined to side with mothers and so on. And I don't know, how do you respond to that? I mean, I don't know if I must ask you if this is true or what's your response to that?
Well, it is true that there is the perception that we are biased in that way. But I would like to unequivocally state that we try to be fair to both parties. All right, because everything in our laws, any party can apply for. Men can, a father, if the mother is errant, if she has left the household and left the father with the children, he can bring her for maintenance. But guess what? The fathers, they macho it out and they don't come.
They rarely ever do.
Yes, they tough it out and they don't come. So right off the bat, we have more women applicants. So right away, it looked like a woman place by virtue of who is coming to make the applications. But everything in our laws work both ways. A man can take a woman for domestic violence. Everything works both ways. What I would ask clients to remember, though, is that even though it is the mother and the father that are presenting themselves to make the applications, etc., the court views the child as the client all the time. And so we rule in the child's best interest, which sometimes goes against what the person making the application would have wanted. When the case is heard and explored, the judge sees a clear path that benefits the child better, that may or may not match with what the applicant or respondent wanted, and so they are disgruntled. But
no,
yes.
Let me ask you, in terms of, does one always need a lawyer? I mean, they always say that the person who tries to represent themselves has a fool for a lie, and I hear quite often that persons go to the family court looking to represent themselves or try to make cases to judges themselves in hopes that their testimony or their experiences will sway the judges. Does one need a lawyer? Is that better to have a lawyer, or what's the situation there?
Well, in the preliminary stages of a matter, you do not need a lawyer to have your matter addressed at the family court. Parties are quite able to represent themselves. It is only if your matter progresses to the trial level that the judge will say, okay, you need to get representation. So
by and large, you can, those initial
mention dates,
you can come and make a case, talk to the judge and see what's what.
And not all cases progress to trial, so in some cases a lawyer is never used. But only if it progresses to a trial stage, then representation by attorneys is necessary.
Let me backtrack for a second and let me ask you, how does one bring a matter to the family court specifically? How is that process undertaken?
Okay, good question. Most of our clients are self-referred, so we have a lot of walk-ins. The services that we provide is well known, and people know that this is what the family court does, and they refer themselves, they walk in. The process is that they get registered and they see a social worker who sits, hears their case, hears the matter, and then along with the social worker they make the best decision as to how to deal with their case. So you have two options when you come to the court. You can choose counseling and conflict resolution sessions, or you can take your matter straight to the court. So the social worker will help them to iron out what is it they want, what is the best option for them. And then the paperwork is drawn up. Of course, the client has to bring in certain documentation, like the birth certificate of the child, their ID, proper address for the person we will be serving. And then those documents are put together in a file. And if it's counseling, then you get your counseling date. If it's court, you get your court date. And that will be it for the application process.
All right. Is this process free? Do you have to work with money? Because I mean, the first thing many people might think is, oh, is this going to cost me a lot of money to get this process started or whatever?
Absolutely not. We're proud to say that all of our services are free except that of DNA testing. And even the money for the DNA testing, it doesn't go to the court. It goes to the entity providing the test.
Okay,
so all services are free except the DNA testing.
one of the things I wanted to ask, before let me just hail up John Campbell, who's checking in from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you, John, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. All right, tell your friends to join so we can. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down, send them in, talk to your friends, let them watch the video as well. Hopefully, they can get some useful information as well. Quick question: how much does the paternity test cost?
Right now, they just had an increase. So mother, father, child, if done through the court, is 28,000. The cheapest you're going to hear anywhere.
All right. So you heard that, ladies and gentlemen. $28,000 to settle that paternity issue.
Yes, and I would advise them to not shy away from coming to do it through the courts. A lot of people go and do it privately, but especially in a case where the child is already in your name, I'm speaking to the men now, and there's a strong suspicion or a strong doubt, or you even know for sure that this child is not yours, you must come through the family court, because we are the only entity that can direct the RGD to change a birth certificate.
Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, if the person does it privately, they still have to go through a legal process to have the name changed
Absolutely.
or adjusted, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. If you do a DNA test on your own and take it to the RGD, they will not honor it. They will send you to the family court.
That's very useful information for those of you who that service might be relevant to.
Right.
Let me ask you, in terms of making the decision to go and see the family court trial, whether it be domestic abuse or a child, I mean, I don't want to say, my question is, when is a good time? Because, I mean, naturally when they come in, they might come in and see a social worker, and that person will sit down and talk with them and so on, and let them appreciate whether, if going forward is the right thing, or they can probably do mediation or whatever the case may be. But what would you say from where you sit is a good checklist for persons to run down before they think that, okay, let me come and talk to let me make this step to go to the family court to see if this issue warrants that kind of attention?
Okay, usually the yardstick is how many times have you tried to address this matter, you and your partner, outside of any kind of intervention? Has this been going back and forth between you for an extended period? Is the situation worsening or getting better? Are you coming to a resolution on your own or not? If you are not, and it has been dragging out for months into years, then you may need some third-party intervention. So I would say, if you're not reaching a resolution, trying to work it out on your own, and things are becoming more tense, tending towards violence or any of that, seek our help before it reaches there.
I mean, I really ask because a lot of the time you might find that persons may take it as a knee-jerk, in the sense that, for example, if you have a discussion and it doesn't go your way immediately, like, I'm going to go to the family court and just take it to the family court, and as opposed to trying to work things out, or you might be like you missed a couple of steps where you could have resolved the issue before you even reached there.
Right. Well, the regular pattern that I see is that parties would have been trying to work it out on their own for a period, probably even involving their pastors or their churches to help them make a resolution. Nothing is forthcoming, and so they come to the family court.
All right. So on the subject of counseling and mediation, do you offer that service, and how is that facilitated?
Yes, we offer that service. We strongly encourage people to utilize that service because there are benefits. It is conducted in a more amicable office setting, and it gives you more time to explore your matter than is available to the court to hear the ins and outs and the history. So we strongly encourage, but we can't enforce that people do mediation because it has to be a choice.
All right. No.
The mediation that we offer, I'd just like to make the point, the mediation that we offer at court also is, how should I put it, not as legally binding as that offered by an agency, say the Dispute Resolution Foundation. So it's not legally binding, but it can still solve the problems if the parties are on board with it and if the personalities are amenable to go that route.
All right. Now, in terms of, for example, like children, what are some of the more common scenarios you see coming before the courts insofar as children are concerned? to settle matters between parents and so on. I know you take the view of you're looking at the child's best interest, but
yes.
What are some of the more common scenarios you see coming relating to mothers and fathers of children?
As I would have outlined before, child maintenance, our number one most access service, followed by custody and access. So a father, for example, will say, boy, the relationship ended some months ago. We're still disgruntled and the situation is tense. And because the situation is tense, I can't get to see my child. So he'll come on the premise of wanting his access rights to be enforced.
All right, and what does,
so we will say to him, okay, well, you have two options. We can call in the lady and let's talk about it first. Or if this has been going on for too long and you think it's past talking about, you can take her to court. Right. Usually, they don't choose the court option at first. Yes, because even though they're upset with each other, they still want to leave room for amicability. So most people will choose our conflict resolution counseling option first. And so they will get their dates and come in. They're assigned to a counselor, and we take it from there.
All right. Is the same process, for example, if they want to settle like maintenance and that kind of thing? Is that a different process? Or
yes, anything can be settled in the mediation process. The only thing that we do not encourage to go to mediation at first is domestic violence issues. Right. And that's understandable, right? You want to kill me, you want to hurt me. Right, I don't necessarily want to sit and talk with you. I want a court order to protect myself. So that we are allowed to go up to court.
I'm going to get to domestic abuse in just a second. Let me just finish. In terms of taking out a maintenance order, you said anyone can do it, either man or woman, as long as they feel like it warrants that kind of attention.
Absolutely.
How is that process? How does that process unfold?
Similarly to the one I just described with the custody, I'm going to stick with my men. Suppose a father comes in. He has the 2 or 3 children. The mother is off about her business, and he's not getting any help, or he's getting insufficient help. He will come, get registered, tell the social worker that complaint. The same options are presented to him. So you want to talk to her first, or you're taking her to court? Him say, well, all right, talk to her. So a counseling date and a counselor is assigned, and we take it from there.
All right. Now, on to the issue of domestic abuse. What power, what authority, what would you do to assist a person who is either a victim or in a situation where they're experiencing domestic? What can the family court do to help? Okay,
well, we help in two ways. First of all, we're looking to protect life and safety. So we're going to send the matter to court for a restraining or a protection order. If the parties are still living together, there is another order that can be added to a restraining order called an occupation order, which puts the abuser outside of the home. Okay. So even if the home is jointly owned, the woman, say the woman is the abuser, she forfeits her right to be there because of her behavior. So the man can be awarded a restraining and occupation order.
How does one, just to be clear, how does one who issues this out? I mean, I know the court judge. Issues are, but the process in terms of how is it issued, how does the person get it and then enforce it on the other person, essentially? Right.
So such an order can only be issued by a judge, one of our 3 judges. Sometimes it is done in the absence of the abuser because the situation is so tense. We have had cases where women come in directly after an attack, and so you see the wounds and the trauma that she's experienced, and so we would send that up to court immediately. The judges normally accommodate that kind of case immediately. The order is given ex parte, meaning the respondent is not present, but he will be served after the fact because we still don't want to breach his rights. He has a right to know that this order has been given against him and come and say his side. And so that's how that would work.
And when you say his side, how is that facilitated? Is it that he would go on a different day or something like that?
Yes, a court date would be part of the order to say this order was given on such and such a day, but please come on this date maybe to have the order explained, for us to hear your side, etc.
I know things would naturally get difficult if people are not cooperative. You know what I mean? And so what do you do in a situation where, for example, you have somebody coming and the other person just determined that they're going to frustrate the process and not going to help? And what kind of do you have any recourse to provide any kind of additional assistance in that kind of situation?
Yes, this is one area that particularly frustrates me, because it lends itself to making the court look like a toothless tiger.
Right.
If you have a person that is adamant that they're just going to go missing, and we can't get to serve the summons or serve the warrant, then it almost brings the case to a halt.
Right.
And there really is not a lot that we can do. We work in tandem with the police to get certain documents served. But if the person keeps being shifty, it creates a huge problem that brings the case to a halt. And then we look like we don't have much teeth, as I said.
So can you actually do anything in terms of, make a recommend? I guess you'd probably just recommend to the police to get a warrant to find the person. That's as much as you
Absolutely.
can do.
We issued a warrant, and even at the application stage now, what our senior judge, Her Honor Mrs. Paula Blake Powell, has mandated us to do is start to collect even more information than we would. So we would like a picture of this person that you bring into court, as many of his addresses as you can remember, the places where he frequents. Just do a lot more data gathering, so that if in the event a warrant needs to go out for, say, he's not paying the maintenance, and a warrant needs to go out, then the police have a lot of options. They know who they're looking for because we have the picture. And then they have several address options that they can visit.
All right. Got a question from Vanessa Silver. She says she loves your name. And
Thank you, Vanessa.
What can a teen mother do if the father of her child refuses to attend family court sessions? I mean, we're just talking about it, but just for her benefit, go it over again.
Right. Well, she would make the application, say she has chosen to go to court. A court date is set, a summons is served, say that he is served and does not show up, then a bench warrant can go out to forcibly bring him in for his non-attendance on the date. So we would serve a warrant in that case.
And I guess await the police
to find him, and hopefully he's not one of the shifty ones and we can find him. And we would forcibly bring him in, and then the case would proceed.
All right. I mean, how do you see these cases proceeding, though? I'll give persons an idea. I mean, when you have these, do they drag on, or some of the, I guess, give some of the, negatives and the positives, some of the things that you have witnessed in terms of how these cases unfold from in the time that you have been there?
Well, the most heart-wrenching part for me is the actual behavior of the clients when they're either before you in counseling or when they're before the court. It's really their attitude and what they present that can cause a case to drag on. Most of our judges, well, all of them want to be fair, and so they want to listen to both sides. But in many cases, there is no compromise, there is no working together. The strife and the enmity is so strong in both of us that we're not getting anywhere.
Okay.
So that is one thing that slows down the process.
Definitely.
Also, in the interest of fairness, our judges will mandate probation officers sometimes to do investigations and report back so that the ruling is more fair. And they have their own challenges and limitations, so sometimes that also will slow down the case.
All right. Got a comment here from Marcia Walker Nelson. Greetings from Boston, Massachusetts, Jamaica land. We love. Thank you, Marcia, for tuning in. Really, really appreciate that. And she's asking, what about adoptions? Do you play any part in the adoption process or facilitate?
Oh, yes, yes. Adoptions are finalized at the family court. They're investigated, and the paperwork and investigative process takes place at the adoption board. But when that has been completed, it comes to the family court to be finalized. Those matters are completely private. They don't even take place in court, open court. They take place in judges' chambers, and then the records are sealed. So yes, Marcia, we do finalize adoptions.
Now, let me ask you this. Under the most ideal circumstances where you have the persons involved and both of them are being fair and are inclined to settle the matter quickly, how quickly can a matter get resolved in the family court?
One day, same day. I've seen it, yes.
So there you go, people. It's up to you really to how involved you are in the process.
Yes, and how badly do you want to settle this, or is it a case where you're in it to win it? You know, a lot of clients are in it to win it, and they're really not thinking about the child when they come. So that's why the court has the responsibility to always think about the child, which I say may run counter to what they came for.
All right. Now, in terms of, you mentioned that the family court provides a lot of additional services that persons can access beyond simply, you know, ventilating or making determinations on cases and so on. What are some of the other different services that persons can access through the family court? I know that parental training is something that the family court is big on. Talk to me about that and other things.
Okay, sure. I'd like to backtrack though, because one of your viewers asked a question about teen moms.
Okay.
So I'd like to start there because we have a teenage pregnancy project.
All right, cool.
Yes, because the family court is not only a legal entity, but we see ourselves as an agent of social change as well. And not everybody is going to come streaming through our doors to benefit from what we do in-house. Excuse me. So we have a number of outreaches. One of them is a teenage pregnancy project, which is run in conjunction with Jubilee Hospital. So a social worker, today is Thursday, a social worker from court is there now having sessions with pregnant teens, the aim of which is to help them to not make the mistake a second time.
Okay.
They're already there with the first, but let's not do this again. Also, to ensure that they complete their education through the Women's Center and just get general support and encouragement. Our work at the family court also exposes the fact that parenting is in need of improvement in our society. So we do have a parenting school that runs for between 6 and 8 weeks with a cohort of parents that is referred to us by court or other outside agencies. And we go through different topics for discussion relating to parenting with the hope of helping them sort out their issues with their children and develop more positive parenting techniques. All right. The family court also has a school. Not many people know that.
What kind of school are we talking about here?
Right, it's called the Family Court Attendance Center. Right now it's not operational because I believe in 2015 or 16 the location that we was housing the school was burnt down.
Okay.
And we're in the process of rebuilding.
Right, so private sector Jamaica, I can't imagine a more
worthy cause.
more appropriate corporate social responsibility project than rebuilding the family court attendance center. I mean,
thank you for that plug.
We need that.
Yes.
We need that to happen sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. So at this school, we take in young men and women who have been kicked out of regular school. They're often before the court. And we try to rehabilitate them and put them back in regular school depending on their age when they're finished with us. So if they're finished with us and they're still at high school age, try to get them back in a high school. If they're a little bit older, we're looking at agencies like HEART or JAGAS or some other kind of skill training or apprenticeship program to absorb them.
To give them a vocation so that they can earn and
so that and they don't return to former ways.
One thing I read also is that you guys help them with like financial planning and budgeting and things like that. Talk to me about that.
Yes, as part of the school curriculum, there's a vocational counselor who would talk to them about that kind of thing to help prepare them.
So let me ask you another question I have in terms of, let me take to a worst case scenario. Just tell me how you would manage this kind of scenario. You see a situation where, for example, a teenager, for example, gets pregnant, doesn't want the child, father is not around, and the child is just, you can just foresee that this child is going to face a difficult life under the current circumstances that they are. What do you do to help that child to, I mean, what are you in a position to provide any assistance to a girl, for example, who has a child, may not want the child and don't know where the father is, can't find him, the father is not interested? What do you do in a situation
What's the
like
age
that?
of this person? It depends.
I'm gonna go ahead and say maybe 16 or a teenager or something like that, even young, maybe let's say early 20s.
Okay. Well, we've had a lot of cases like that where young adults come, even while the child is in utero, to say, I'm pregnant, but when this baby is born, I know that I cannot afford to care for him or her, and I would like to put it up for adoption. So that case will be referred to the adoption board. Sometimes they even come with the person who is to adopt the child. So we would refer that to the adoption board to see that process through. If it's a teen now, that person is considered a minor. So together with our social worker, the teen, and her guardian or parent, the decision would have to be made as to the way forward.
So it seems to me like you really you serve a far beyond just merely, well, not merely, but beyond just adjudicating cases.
Absolutely, there is a
like
broad
a real
spectrum.
Intake, yeah? I mean, the people come and seek the family court out for all different kind of services relating to family development and growth, and just making it in life on a daily basis.
Yes, and that's why we're thankful for forums such as this, because sometimes awareness is weak. And so when I get the opportunity to talk about what we do, a lot of people are actually surprised, and I get the chance to make them aware. So,
all right. Before I even move on, the question, do you see a lot of men before the courts on the litigation side, like the one bringing the woman to court to say, I need maintenance or I need this? I know you mentioned earlier that a lot of the time the macho thing kind of kicks in and so on, but I mean, what's the ratio? What's the ratio like in terms of the men who make the process work?
I can answer you by service.
All right, cool.
For maintenance, no. Not a lot of fathers going to bring the mother. I see a few of those cases. But for access to their child, wanting to be a part of their child's life, that's where the men show up. And so I want Jamaica to know that our men are very, very interested in playing a role in their child's life.
All right. Tell them again.
Right? Not every father is an absentee, runaway father.
All right.
In fact, a lot of them are just the opposite.
All right, and so what else you see them coming before the court? What kind of other service you see them? I mean, obviously for DNA and paternity, I'm sure.
I was getting there.
I'm sure that is probably your most popular one.
Yes, the men come for access and even sometimes custody and DNA testing, because boy, I missed baby fever me, but here a little rumor say,
Could have genuine.
Another next man name a call, so I want to start it out. Right, so they come for paternity as well.
All right. So, I mean, we've gone through a lot of things. I mean, I want to give the final before moving to wrapping and just recapping some of the things that we've gone through. So what's your final analysis on the service that they provide, and what, in terms of navigating, how easy is it, if you were, maybe just ask you the question, how easy is it to navigate the family court system?
We have our challenges, but I want to think that our layout and how the office runs aids a smooth navigation through our system. But I won't lie, we have our challenges, sometimes with documentation and so on. But I don't think it's difficult to navigate, especially when you're coming for the first time to make an application.
All right, so
where the difficulty sometimes comes in is with clients' understanding of what took place in court. There's a stigma about court, and people find court very intimidating. So they're standing there in front of the judge and not understanding a thing that's going on. And they come down to me and they will say, boy, Miss Fuller, I just coming from court, but I don't really know what just go on, Yes. And so I sit and I take them through it.
Which begs the question, I mean, in cases where, for example, the person can't read or write or things like that, how do you help them? You know what I mean? Because I don't imagine you must see a lot of persons like that, basically.
Yes, or even persons with disabilities we cater for. Right. So if we have a deaf, mute person coming to court, the court is notified, And efforts are made to get interpreters to come in on that day. We also have 2 staff members who are quite adept at sign language, so they would be utilized in court on that day. So we try to offer our diverse population our services.
Real inclusive.
Real inclusive. If we realize that at the application process that this client is challenged, we even write it so that the court is aware and know how to deal with that client.
All right, so I guess there you have it, people. I mean, the family court is more than what we think, definitely more than what I thought it was. Absolutely. I thought it was the place you go to, probably just like in my own ignorant view as a man, you go there to sort out the custody issue, sort out the maintenance issue, and if there's a domestic abuse issue, that's about it. But it seems like there's a whole lot more available through the court.
A broad spectrum of services we attempt to offer to serve the nation.
We have to thank you for the service, because it's really a whole lot, and you are dealing with the people out there who might not necessarily feel like they feel intimidated by the whole thing, so you get to help them where they are, and that's really, really fantastic. Exactly. We have a comment from Zantra Woolcock, who says, I love this session with the social worker. It's very informative. So I think she's paying you a compliment.
Thank you, Ms. Woodcock. Thank you.
And Vanessa again is asking you to please tell mothers to stop keeping children away from fathers who want to be active in their child's lives. I'm sure that's
all those kind of matters are discussed in the counseling sessions, because we do realize that sometimes mothers are guilty of that.
All right, I think she wants you to make an appeal, look in the camera and talk to them. I'm sure that would make life a lot easier for you and the rest of your colleagues down there.
Okay, no problem. As I said before, our Jamaican men are sometimes stigmatized as being absentee, not interested. This is not true, mothers. When a father is showing interest in his child, when he wants to see his child, when he wants to give support, please do not deny him this because you are still having unresolved issues with him. Do not mix up the issues you have with him with the relationship that he's trying to build with his child. It's not right. And in the long run, you damage your child emotionally. The development of the child is sacrificed. So let's put personal feelings aside. People always put your children first, and things will be better.
All right. So just recap in terms of what some of the services that you can access when you go to the family court. Of course, there is the issue of settling custody and care and maintenance over a child, providing things that they need, that kind of thing. But they also offer training, parental counseling, even before that, mediation and counseling to help you settle issues that come before you. And as she said, if both parties are willing, you can resolve those in one day, make things work out real fast and get to a conclusion really quick. They work with teenage mothers. So if any of us know anybody out there, a teenage mother, underage mother, who might need some assistance, the family court will be there to provide assistance so they can counsel them, so they can know what to do, what comes next, and how to move on from this and, keep their life going on track. Of course, DNA testing, as Ms. Fuller said, they provide the cheapest service out there. And at the end of the day, you still have to come back to them because they're the only ones who can authorize the RGD to change the name on a birth certificate.
Correct.
Right? And so there's also the attendance center, and I'm going to appeal to everybody out there. You don't have to be in corporate or private sector. I mean, I cannot think of any other more important service that help the family court to get up at the attendance center so they can continue providing the assistance that many other persons out there need to get themselves back on their feet after going through situation. May they have a child before they planned or expected, and you can help them to get back on their feet and go ahead and restart their lives, which I mean, I can't think of a more noble job than that. So anybody out there who can help, I would really appreciate. I'm sure she would too as well.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna give the last word to you about just to let persons you represent your place, talk to them, and let them know what the family court is all about. And just give the last word to you.
All right, thanks. My work at the family court has made me realize that a lot of the violence in society stems from within the family. So I want to urge our population, both men and women, if you're having a problem that you can't seem to solve, If things are getting worse, please seek us out. Yes, we have our challenges with meeting your needs sometimes. I won't sugarcoat it, but we are there to help, and I think in most cases we do offer valuable assistance. So please don't stay away, please seek us out and benefit from what we're offering you.
All right, it's time for us to wrap. Thanks to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in questions and comments. And if you sent in a question and we didn't answer it in our discussion, not to worry. We will be going back through and we'll be able to send them on to our guest if needs be, so you can get the kind of information you need. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. And if there's anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, let us know. And we'll try our best to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Jamaica Information Service and Instagram too. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.